Swashbucklers, you're listening to Under the Crossbones, now with more episodes. Episode number 75 today. Look at that. We're a quarter century of episodes old. Yay! Today is, like I said, episode number 75. My name is Phil Johnson. I'm your host for the show. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for telling your friends about the show. That is the number one thing that keeps this show going, is you going out and go, hey, do you like pirates? Of course you like pirates. There's a show about pirates where they talk about pirates. Of course you want to listen to it, right? Episode number 75, fun fact about the number 75. 75 is the number of balls in a standard game of bingo in the United States. So when you go bingo, there are 75 balls in that little hopper thing that they turn, and the little balls go around, and then one of them falls out, and they go, oh, 75. And that's got to be like the highest number. There is no 076. So if you're looking at your bingo card and you see like an 076, you're not going to win. That's all it is. That's how it is. That's how it is. It's not fair, but that's how it is. My guest on the show today, we're going to talk swords. We haven't done this before. We haven't really talked swords a lot, right? My guest on the show today is Neil Massey of Rogue Steel, who you can find at roguesteel.com. And Neil makes swords and daggers and things, pointy sharp things that little children are not allowed to play with. But he doesn't make them pointy and sharp. He makes stage blades. Yeah. So if you're looking for a new blade to take to the Pirate Fest or a theater thing of some sort, like if you're in the theater thing, not if you're just going to the theater, you probably don't want to take a sword. If you're just going to the theater, that seems awkward, hard to sit down with the scabbard. And anyway, Neil makes swords, and he makes them at roguesteel.com, for stage and for play and things like that. So we're going to dig into all sorts of stuff about making swords. Really fun interview. You're going to dig it. This week was, I was trying to think, I was like, oh, what should I talk about on the show? And I was like, I had such a boring week. Not boring in that it wasn't exciting. It just wasn't exciting to talk about. My girlfriend was home the entire week with this flu cold thing that's going around. And so she was just out of commission for the entire week. And so I was taking care of her and feeding her warm, cozy things, and myself drinking tons of water and popping vitamin C drops like a madman to avoid getting it. So it was not a very exciting week. I did do a couple of shows. Thank you, Santa Rosa. Thank you, Novato, California. Both shows last week were fantastic, sold out, wonderful shows. And one of the comics that featured for me on Thursday night, Priyanka Wali, you're going to hear her later in the show because I'm going to play some of her stuff. She did a great job. So the shows were great. And they were the kind of great shows that there was not even like anything out of whack with them. There was nothing that made the show difficult. The shows were very easy. The audiences were lovely. There was good food. Everybody had good drink. Everybody had a good time. There was like no weirdness. It was like it's like when you go to work, right, and you have just a really good day at work, but nothing super specific happened that made it a really good day at work. Those are the best days at work, right? Because you're just cruising, with cruise control. I did try out some new material. I tried out a new bit about smooth jazz that I wrote in my car on the way there, and that worked pretty well, so I'll keep working on that. But, the shows were great, so thank you all who came out to those gigs. There are tour dates coming up. Tuesday, January the 24th. That's tonight if you're listening to it the day the show comes out. I'll be popping into O'Malley's in Mountain View, California for a quick set to work on some new stuff. Friday, January the 27th, I will be at the Underdog Wine Bar, Concannon Winery in Livermore, California, headlining that show. Jill Maragos is featuring, I just found out today, so that is going to be a super badass show. It's going to be really, really fun with lots of drunk white people. Thursday, February the 2nd, I will be at the Tasting Room in Fresno, California, headlining there. Saturday, February the 4th, I will be at the Ukiah. Sometimes my mouth just doesn't want to work, especially when I'm trying to say Ukiah Valley Conference Center in Ukiah, California. I am middling on that show, and I'm not sure who the headliner is, but those are always amazing shows. And honestly, if you're in or near Ukiah, California, you have nothing better to do anyway, so come on out February 4th and see us there. Wednesday, February the 8th, I will be at the Vesper in Campbell, California, doing a headlining set. Thursday, February the 16th, Thumbprint Cellars in Healdsburg, California. More wineries. Love them wineries. I'll be headlining there. Friday, February the 17th, I'll be at Angelica's in Redwood City, California. I think I'm featuring for Mickey Joseph that night, so that's going to be good. And then Friday, February the 24th, I will be at the Setup at 222 Hyde in San Francisco, California. Yay. And the setup is a great show. It's in the basement of a classic jazz club from the 60s, and it fits a very few amount of people. And they pack the people in there, and it is sort of hot, sweaty, underground comedy. Man, it's really a fun show. If you are digging Under the Crossbones, and I hope you are, like I said, telling your friends does wonders. Just huge wonders for this show. I appreciate you doing that. If you want to join us on in the various places where we're talking about stuff, come on over to Facebook, facebook.com/underthecrossbones, twitter.com/undercrossbones, which I've been a little more on top of recently. I didn't have my workflow set up to catch it. Now I've fixed the workflow, so I'm more on top of the Under the Crossbones Twitter these days. And of course, you can find all the show notes for this show at underthecrossbones.com/075. Also trying to be better about setting up those links. If all else fails, just go to underthecrossbones.com. Everything is there. They're including the support page at underthecrossbones.com/support. And that is if you want to, say, donate some money to the show, which would be awesome because I spend many, many hours creating this show. There's a little PayPal box. Just dump in there whatever amount of money you feel is appropriate to you. And that's fine. Maybe the price of a bottle of rum. Since I don't drink, the money will be well appreciated. And I just put it back into promoting the show anyway, so that's how it works. There's also an Amazon banner there. If you click that Amazon banner, you go buy yourself something nice. Maybe you buy yourself some rum on Amazon. I don't know if Amazon sells rum. They sell everything. I don't know why they wouldn't. They probably sell, I don't know, black market babies. I don't know. Amazon seems to sell everything. But if you buy yourself something nice at Amazon, you click the banner, buy yourself something, and then Amazon kicks me back a tiny bit of money. It doesn't change your cost at all, nothing like that. So it is a totally free way for you to help support Under the Crossbones. And if you would like to be a sponsor of the show, it is very cheap. It is very easy. And you can find all the information about doing that at underthecrossbones.com. All right, so we are going to talk swords. Are you ready to talk swords? We're going to talk long swords, short swords, wide swords. I don't know that much about swords, but I've learned a whole bunch more after my talk with Neil Massey about what it is and how they do it and where it all goes and that type of stuff. All right, so you can find Neil at roguesteel.com, but let's get into the talk right now with Neil Massey from. So you make swords and are into the whole sword game, which I know next to nothing about, so I will probably have plenty of stupid questions for you.
Well, they say there are no stupid questions, right?
I suppose so. So tell me a little bit about how you got into making swords, and I understand you do combat choreography as well, right?
I do, yeah, and actually that all came out of just my working in the theater and working as an actor.
Okay.
There was a time when I first started out, I was doing a lot of Shakespeare festivals and outdoor dramas, so I had to learn how to fight on stage.
Uh-huh.
And I found that it was something that I enjoyed, and I continued to train, and I decided that I wanted to be a teacher and a choreographer myself. So at that point, I wanted to start building up my own armory. And at the time, this was, early, mid-'90s, I couldn't afford the good stuff, and I didn't want to buy the cheap stuff that was out there, so I just started making my own stuff.
Okay.
I kind of had some experience. I grew up on a farm, so I knew how to weld. I knew basic metalworking. And I just started playing around with it, and I had some friends who were in the metal industry. A guy who worked at a steel company, actually in Dayton, where I was at the time, and I picked his brain a little bit, and I just started going from there, and made some stuff for myself, and people said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Can you make me one?" And it just snowballed, and here I am.
Interesting. That's how all the best businesses begin. Yeah.
It's like if you had asked me 20 years ago if this is where I would be, I would never have guessed. It's pretty amazing.
All right. Well, let's dig into some of that stuff a little bit. So you started out as an actor. And you were doing theater and things like that, mostly like just regional theater, those types of things?
Yeah.
And what caused you to go into that? How did you grow up that acting became your thing of choice?
Well, it was funny. I didn't act at all until my senior year of high school. I had a friend of mine who was taking the drama class and said, "Hey, you should do this. It's a lot of fun." And luckily, the drama teacher at my high school, Gwen Freeman, was absolutely amazing. She's an amazing, amazing woman. She built this incredible program at home, which was in Maryland, Berlin, Maryland. I went to Stephen Decatur High School. Uh-huh. And she was such a huge influence on me. And I started performing, and I loved it. I still didn't really realize that that was a career choice. So I ended up going to college and was, doing theater on the side until and that's where I met people who were planning to do it as a living. And I found out, hey, you know what, this could be a career. Uh-huh. And so I just pursued that. And, I changed my major and was lucky enough to get work. So nice. I continued to work there and until, this sort of sidebar came up and, I've never looked back.
Nice. Did you have a favorite role that you played?
Oh, wow. There's so many. It's hard to pick. One of my favorite roles, and I did it for a number of years, it was an outdoor drama in Ohio called Blue Jacket, and I played Daniel Boone for, I think, total. And that was great fun. It's like, actors' summer camp. You get to ride horses and shoot guns and just play in the outdoors. It was great.
That's great. So as you're doing that, and you said you were doing Shakespeare and things like that, there's definite fight scenes. Where did you learn about doing the choreography stuff?
I had learned a bit when I was in college. We had when we had worked there, I had another one of my professors in college taught us some stage combat basics. Uh-huh. After I got out, a lot of my training just came from working. When I would work on a show, they would have a fight director come in, teach us choreography, so I learned some of the basics there. But it was really, first of all, at the Orlando Shakespeare Festival, where I was introduced to a certified teacher in the Society of American Fight Directors, a gentleman named Dan Carter. And when he started explaining things and teaching things, it really started to click for me. So that's where I pursued that train of thought or that path, I guess, and started working with more Society of American Fight Directors, teachers. One of my early teachers was a fight master, Mark Gwynn, who was a huge influence on me. And from there became a certified teacher. And it's just all, like I said, it all sort of just opened up.
Yeah, interesting. What is it about, because the difference between doing and teaching is usually pretty significant. I work as a musician a lot, and so the difference between being able to play guitar and teach guitar can be pretty vast sometimes. What kind of threshold did you have to cross as a combat choreographer to be able to teach it as opposed to just do it?
The big thing about teaching is you have to be able to break everything down into very manageable chunks. Mm-hmm. It's like it can seem pretty daunting when you first go in and try to teach choreography or teach a class because, your average person has never picked up a sword before.
Sure.
So the idea of trying to do that can be pretty overwhelming. So basically you just start and look at what you're doing and look at it in very small, manageable chunks, teach one thing at a time and begin to layer. And so once you layer all those things together, you start to have, you start to develop this skill set where you're able to create this illusion of violence on stage, right. But still obviously keeping it safe is our main priority.
Right. Cool. Okay. So you're getting into teaching the combat stuff, and are you working for yourself? I don't know how that works. Are you working for yourself? Are there schools for that kind of thing?
As far as teaching?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. I teach in a number of different venues. I do teach privately. There are a number of regional workshops all around the country and across the world, actually, where you can go and students can come and take either a few days of classes where you have short 90-minute classes in a variety of subjects, or you can do, a week or 2 weeks that are very intensive and focused on one particular style. Okay. I also teach at some of the colleges here in the Chicago area where it's part of the actor training program, part of the curriculum at a lot of the schools around here, actually. And so I teach at Roosevelt University and at College of DuPage, and have taught at some of the other colleges here as well, where some of them teach kind of an overview, but others actually teach the skills proficiency test curriculum and get tested and become actor combatants in the Society of American Fight Directors.
Oh, interesting. It's that there's a group for that kind of thing. I find fascinating.
yeah, it is. It's funny, and that they've been around. The SAFD has been around for around 30 years, and the great thing about them is that it gives us all sort of a common language,
Sure.
if you will,
Yeah.
so that you're not always starting from scratch. If you meet someone who's trained and has the same vocabulary and use a lot of the same concepts as you, it just makes rehearsal so much easier.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Yeah, that's interesting. And so there's a definite jump from I'm going to swing a sword to I'm going to build a sword. And
Yes.
you said that you grew up on a farm, and that gave you some metalworking skills.
Right.
Having never grown up on a farm, where do metalworking skills come in farming?
Well, mostly in taking care of the equipment.
Okay.
There's, when you're a farmer, you have to sort of make do with whatever you have, and the equipment tends to break down, and you can't always run into town and get a part, so you've got to fix it right then and there.
Okay.
So, we ended up doing a lot of that. And then just other equipment around the farm, fences and gates and, whatever you have needs repairing. So, yeah, I think my dad taught me to weld when I was maybe 10 years old. And, basically you're taking things apart and putting them back together all the time. So that sort of stuff made sense to me, because I had done it a lot. So I was able to make that jump from what I had in looking at the stuff that was available at the time and looking at the construction techniques and just figuring it out.
Right. And so since you're building weapons for stage and screen, they're dull-edged weapons then, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's all I do. I don't do any sharps. That's a whole nother market,
Right.
And it's you do build them. I mean, they're similar. Obviously, it's made out of metal, so it's sort of like a real sword, but in order to make it safe, the blade geometry has to be a little bit different. You want the edges to be a little bit thicker so they stand up to one another.
Right.
A sharp blade is obviously going to be very dangerous, and if the edges are too thin, they will actually start to burr up and create little sharp parts on the blade, so you've got to be careful that doesn't happen. So it is different. Yeah, it's a completely different approach to how it's put together.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so how deep have you gotten into sort of the history of swords and weaponry? How accurate would you say your items are?
Well, I do a lot of research historically, just for my own edification, I suppose, because what I build, it's not necessarily a historical replica. I don't make it exactly the way that they were made, but I do like to keep that spirit. So if you see it on stage, it looks right. I don't want to have anything that I make look too modern,
right.
even though I'm using modern techniques to make it. And I don't want it to look out of place and take the audience out of the story, basically.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. How many different kinds of blades and such do you make?
Well, I make a real wide variety, although most of what I do tends to be Western European.
Okay.
If we go back to what I teach, the SAFD basically has 8 different disciplines of stage combat that they test in. And so the most common stuff I make are things like rapier and dagger, broadsword or long sword, sword and shield. I make knives. I make small swords and what we call single swords, which are essentially those kind of Hollywood swashbuckly type swords that you see in all those old movies. So that's primarily what I do. I also do some stuff, more Eastern things. I'll do some katana. I'll do Chinese style swords. Basically anything, if you want it, I can make pretty much anything you need. But most of the stuff tends to be Western European.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And take me through a little bit of the process of making a sword like that. What do you start with? What's your raw materials?
Well, you start with one of two things for me, and it all starts with the blade. My blades are either steel or aluminum. I'll do either one. Aluminum used to be more prominent in film, but more and more people are starting to use it in theater as well, just because of the weight savings.
Sure.
So I'll start with one or other of those. If you're going to go with steel, you want to make sure that it's a good medium to high carbon spring steel. There's a lot of swords out there you can see that you can buy that are made out of stainless, and that's a no-no for stage combat. Stainless is it's just too brittle, so it won't hold up, and it tends to, if it does break, it breaks catastrophically.
Oh, okay.
Which means that instead of a small fracture, it will break, and part of the blade will fly off, and usually hit somebody if you're
Right.
if you're unlucky. So never stainless, but you start with a good steel alloy, shape it, get it rough shaped to what you want, and then heat treat it, which is actually probably as important or more important than the type of steel that you use.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a way of making the steel tougher so that it can bend and flex without breaking.
Right.
So once it's properly heat treated and you've got your blade, you can do your finish shaping and polishing, and then build the hilt on top of that. Now, for me, I tend to use steel for the furniture, for the guards and pommels, even on the aluminum bladed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to hold up a little bit better. And then the primary concern with putting the hilt together for me is getting the proper balance and proper ergonomics in the grip. Mm-hmm. So that it feels good to the hand. It makes sense. The weapon sort of tells you how it wants to be used.
Okay.
And again, there we're looking at a slightly different formula than you would have for a real sword. In a real sword, you want more weight in the blade so that it has force when it cuts.
Oh.
Whereas for a stage piece, you want a little more weight in the pommel so it's easier to control the blade and stop it instead of having it go into your partner, but casting that energy beyond.
Right. That makes sense. When I think when people think of forging a sword, they're picturing a very dirty man, a very sweaty man in front of a giant kiln and his sledgehammer and just hammering the thing into shape. How does the modern process differ from that?
Well, it's still dirty and sweaty.
Okay.
But
I'm glad to hear it.
Well, there is that. You got to have that, right? But yeah, I don't do a lot of forging. Honestly, the stuff, forging is a very specific skill and it takes a lot of time.
Uh-huh.
So the forged stuff, it tends to be very expensive.
Right.
Basically is what it comes down to.
Okay.
So in order to save money, because I'm selling to theaters, and you can't outfit a show with $2,000 swords a piece, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So what I do, it's a lot of welding, grinding, using modern metalworking machines like mills and CNC machines. A lot of times, I'll job certain parts out, to a machine shop for things that are very repetitive instead of doing it just myself.
Okay.
So it's all about finding the right tools for the job, really. And then we end up, like I said, a lot of the job is grinding and polishing.
Which sounds
and a lot of
tedious.
welding.
Okay, yeah, and interesting. So are you working with people who are designing their own things mostly, or are you doing the designs, especially for hilts and such?
Most of what I do is stuff that I've designed. I have essentially a mix of different models that are sort of standard models. Mm-hmm. And so for all that stuff, I have parts and jigs set up so that it's easy for me to do those. And that's primarily what I do, especially when I'm selling to, say a university that wants to buy a number of swords for a class that they're going to teach.
Sure.
They just buy stuff that I have available. But I also do custom work as well. So if somebody, calls or emails and says, hey, I have this idea for a sword, they can absolutely send me a picture or a sketch or just ideas that they have, and we can develop it, completely new. Obviously, that's a lot more time consuming, but that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah. Have you ever run across stuff that people want where you're just like, either that's not possible or no, that's really stupid, I'm not going to do that?
Well, I have had that happen. Primarily that'll happen a lot with movie swords and things like that. Uh-huh. And because of trademark and copyright, I really can't do exact copies. I can do things that are inspired by something like that, but right. Legally, I'm not allowed to do that. And I've had some people ask for some sort of fantasy-based stuff that's really spiky and, parts sticking everywhere off it. And I'm like, that's not going to work for stage combat. You're going to impale yourself or somebody else. So
right.
Maybe we want to tone that down just a little bit. Yeah.
The blade is dull, but you can kill yourself with the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of goes against what we're trying to do.
Do you have like a most popular item, or is it pretty much just whatever the show needs that you're selling to?
It's funny. It tends to go in waves. We'll do, seems like we'll do a lot of one particular item for, a few months, and then we'll move on to something else. But I think probably more than anything else, we do rapiers and daggers, followed closely by broadswords or long swords.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So the website is roguesteel.com, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Great. Well, we will link up roguesteel.com in the show notes for this. And Neil, this has been very cool and informative. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, man. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you think people should know?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it pretty well.
All right.
Actually, but it's just fun for me to do it, and I love getting my stuff out there and having people use it. That's the best thing for me. So if you want a sword that you want to use, give me a call.
That's great. Well, there's lots of pirates listening who can probably use a new sword. So all
excellent.
Good. Well, thanks a bunch, Neil. I'm glad we got a chance to talk.
Sure thing. Take care, Phil.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there it is, friends. That is my talk with Neil Massey of Rogue Steel. And you're a pirate. You need a sword. I know. I got to get a sword, too. You can find all of his stuff, all more information about how to order your sword, custom sword, stock sword, whatever sword you need, at roguesteel.com. Spelled like it sounds. So go check that out. Heads up, Texas Pirates. Texas Pirates, yeah, they're out there. And anyone else in the vicinity of Grand Prairie, Texas, I want you to mark your calendars for Saturday, February 11th. It's coming up quick for Pirates on the Prairie 6. This is an annual concert hosted and headlined by the Bilge Pumps, who you've heard on this show, a favorite of the show. They'll be bringing their fun-drenched show full of comedy and music to the Uptown Theater there in Grand Prairie, Texas. You can catch my talk with Craig Lutke of the Bilge Pumps on episode 53 of Under the Crossbones if you want to dig into all that before you go to the show. And also performing will be Pride of Bedlam, another huge favorite on the Texas pirate scene and of this show. Yeah, they're great. You can hear my talk with Dane Bennett of Pride of Bedlam in episode 59. That was a really good one. You will also be treated to some salty pirate poetry by Sea Dog Slam in the lobby before the show. So you go in, you get some piratey slam poetry, and then you go in to the auditorium, beautiful auditorium there in Grand Prairie, Texas, at the Uptown Theater, and you're going to see the Bilge Pumps, and you're going to see Pride of Bedlam, and you're going to have a good time. The tickets are just $12, $5 for the kids, and it's a family-friendly show. You can't beat that. That is an evening of entertainment for nothing. So go get your tickets before this thing sells out. You can get tickets by going underthecrossbones.com/bilge. That's Pirates of the Prairie 6 featuring the Bilge Pumps, Pride of Bedlam, and Sea Dog Slam on Saturday, February 11th. Saturday, February 11th at the Uptown Theater in Grand Prairie, Texas. Get those tickets at underthecrossbones.com/bilge. Under the Crossbones is also sponsored today by Pirate Radio, Treasure Coast, WKKC-DB, playing the best pirate music and pirate radio talk. Yes, listen to this show on both stations, Under the Crossbones. On both their stations, just go to Pirate Radio of the TreasureCoast.com or PirateRadioTC.com. And don't forget to download their apps. There's the Pirate Radio Treasure Coast app, which is their music station, and the Pirate Radio Talk, which is the talk station, where they talk about stuff. And you can hear Under the Crossbones on both those apps. And the show seems to be doing really well over there, which makes me happy. Here's the thing that you can do that would be very, very helpful to me. We have many, many listeners around the world. Many listeners around the world, which makes me happy. However, I don't know who all of you are. And I would like to know who you are a little bit better so that I can cater the things that I am presenting on the show and the places I take live podcasts to, and all that kind of stuff. And it would be helpful if I know a little bit more about you. So what you can do to do me a favor, help me out here, go to underthecrossbones.com/survey. Is a quick little 7-question survey. It'll take you literally like 15 seconds to fill it out, and you just click the submit, and that will help me know how to cater the show to you a little bit better. That would be very, very helpful, and I appreciate it. Because if I'm not making the show for you, who am I making it for? I'm not making it for me. Because if it was just for me, I wouldn't record it. I could just sit here and talk to myself and talk to people on the phone. But I record it because I'm making it for you. See how that works? It's so nice. It's really nice of me. It's very, very nice of me. All right, let's have some comedy today. We are going to hear, like I said earlier in the show, we're going to hear from Priyanka Wali, who featured for me in Novato, California last week. And very, very funny. She did a great job, killed it, and set him up set him up so I could knock him down. That's what she did. She is also, not only is she a comedian, she is an internal medicine specialist. Yeah, she's a doctor. This girl is smart, man, and so's her comedy. So you're gonna dig it, all right? And you can find her at Priyanka. See, there's my mouth. It's getting all tied up again. PriyankaWali.com. I'll spell it for you after. All right, here we go. Let's hear some comedy from Priyanka Wali.
I actually hate telling people I am a doctor. I think it's way cooler to say I'm more of a professional drug dealer, you know? I'm the Pablo Escobar of Percocet. I think it's so much cooler to say I'm a veterinarian that specializes in one species, okay? I just want to be more like the Kevorkian of comedy, or the Dr. Dre of laughter. Guys, I could go all night with this, okay? And I've always had this dream of being the stand-up comedian. I remember telling my dad at a very early age, Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a comedian. He said to me, Priyanka, it's pronounced physician. And I said, but Dad, you know, they say laughter is supposed to be the best medicine. He said, only people who don't have health insurance say those things.
And that is our show for today, friends. Thank you once again for tuning in. If you want to find out more about Neil Massey, go to roguesteel.com, where you can order yourself a fancy sword or a fancy dagger, and you can wave it around at the festivals. Yeah, that's what we need. And if you want to hear more from comedian Priyanka Wali, go to PriyankaWali.com. I'm going to spell it for you. Ready? Priyanka, Priyanka, which spells like it sounds, right? And Wali, Wali. And of course, there will be links to that and more on the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/075. And I'll put some bonus goodies on there as well. Please make sure that you are subscribed over on iTunes. That is the easiest way, if you're an Apple person. If you're not an Apple person, then subscribe on whatever your favorite podcast app is. I use Podcast Addict. If you use Stitcher or Slacker or iHeartRadio or Podcasts, Overcast, and there's a bunch of them out there. Whatever podcasty thing you use on your phone, make sure that you subscribe there to Under the Crossbones. And then every Tuesday, like magic, the new episode will appear in your magic phone. Those little magic devices in our pockets giving us cancer. That's easy to do. So iTunes or wherever else. And of course, if you leave a review on iTunes, that is always lovely as well. I appreciate those very, very much. And again, all the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/075. Lots of cool shows coming up in the next following weeks. So stay tuned, and I'll see you then. Bye.